Burkina Faso's new government seeks the former president's arrest. Why is the rate of sexually transmitted diseases increasing? And The Force Awakens the box office with a massive weekend haul. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Lenore Moudou. This is Africa 54. Vincent Makori is off today. We begin our broadcast tonight in West Africa, where the nation of Burkina Faso has issued an international arrest warrant for ousted leader Blaise Compaoré in connection with the 30-year-old murder of the country's former president, Thomas Sankara. Burkina Faso's President Thomas Sankara, seen here in file footage, was killed in 1987, the year a coup brought Blaise Compaoré to power. Nearly 30 years on, an international warrant's been issued for Compaoré's arrest in connection with his death. An autopsy on a body believed to be Sankara's earlier this year showed it was riddled with bullets. That's adding weight to suggestions he was executed in the coup all those years ago. At least 10 others have been charged in connection with his death. Compaoré was driven from power in October 2014 in an angry backlash against his attempts to extend his 27-year rule. He fled to neighboring Ivory Coast, where he is now thought to be based. Now, a heroic group of Muslims have defended their Christian companions during an Islamist attack in Kenya. According to Reuters, a bus traveling without a police escort from Nairobi to Mandera near the Somali border was fired on by Al-Shabaab militants on Monday, forcing the vehicle to stop. Quick-thinking Muslim passengers helped to disguise the Christians on board before the militants boarded the bus and ordered everyone off. Despite being ordered by the terrorists to separate into groups of Muslims and non-Muslims, the group refused and stuck together. According to the BBC, when the gunmen threatened to shoot them, the Muslim passengers told the militant to, quote, kill them together or leave them alone. The gunmen eventually gave up and fled. 2 people were killed and at least 4 others were wounded in the ambush. The Osiri mine in western Kenya is home to about 3,000 small-scale miners who risk their lives searching for gold. The operations are largely unregulated, and miners use toxic mercury to extract the gold despite the known health risks. Lenny Ruvaga reports.
24-year-old Fred Visengi looks for gold in ore he extracted from a nearby mine. The tools of his trade: mercury, water, and a metal bowl. He has been doing this for the past 4 years, earning about $100 per month. Visengi knows the mercury is dangerous.
The government has not provided an alternative way of extracting gold or any other chemical. If we got a solution from the government, we would be in a better position to help improve our extraction methods.
Side effects of handling mercury include damage to the brain, liver, and lungs.
I cannot stop mining because this is how I earn my living. If I stop working, where will I go? I have to mine, even if it's harmful to my health. I have no choice.
Artisanal or small-scale mining is illegal in Kenya, but the ban is rarely enforced, nor are work conditions regulated. Injuries are common as miners can lack even helmets and boots. David Maganya, the founder of the NGO I Hope, says he is making little headway in training miners on safety measures when it comes to mercury and other risks.
The challenge comes in terms of affordability. Like we talk about, they have to use the personal protective equipment, that is the nose masks, the gloves, and all that. It is difficult for them to afford this one on a continuous basis.
Legalizing artisanal mining could be a first step to improvement. A bill to regulate both large and small-scale mining is before Parliament.
1, licensing. They need to be licensed so that they know where to go. Secondly, there needs to be land use plan for the areas and identification of the spots that they can specifically go to do their mining from these places. This is wealth that is available and they should be able to get it.
The miners formed a labor union 4 years ago to advocate for protective gear and support for miners disabled or injured on the job. The union is trying to partner with a German organization to obtain the gear at a reduced cost. Lenny Ruvaga for VOA News, Osiri, Kenya.
Traffic, it is a universal problem and a problem for Africa's rapidly growing urban centers. Uganda, however, is trying a new approach. For the first time in 30 years, passenger trains are once again chugging in and out of the Kampala train station, but this time they are bringing in commuters from a suburb outside the capital. Sergino Rusbla has more.
This is a normal rush hour in Kampala. Compared to the streets, the train station is rather quiet. City officials hope that this will change.
There's been need for us to move the commuter passengers within the city so that we're able to reduce the jam that we really see, especially during the peak hours, both in the morning and the evening.
Kampala hasn't had commuter trains since 1992, when private minibuses called matatus took over the streets. The new train service is just one line, making 3 stops between the city center and the area of Namanve.
More comfortable and to bring me nearer to my workplace. It's also cheaper than the taxis and the buses.
I'm fed up of the jam on the road. The jam, you stone road for over 2 hours. Just to get in Kampala, but here it only take only 40 minutes. Yet the fares are also fair, let me say. 1.5 as compared to 2.5. A difference of 1,000 shillings.
Since the 1970s, Kampala's population has exploded. Most people live outside the city. In just the last decade, the number of people in the suburbs has doubled to 2 million. The jams have become the top challenge. This new train line is a test to find a permanent solution.
It's going to be a pilot project for 1 year. It's going to help us really be able to get the required information, the data that we can use, so that we're able to get to a full-scale, operation.
In 1 year, the Ugandan Railway Corporation is hoping to transport 10,000 people, a challenge as people haven't exactly been flooding to the rails during the first week. Taxis and minibuses are simply more convenient for some people, at least for now. The train is the second project the city government has launched to curb traffic. In May, city buses started to run and their popularity is slowly picking up. Sergio Rosblat for VOA News, Kampala.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at Linor Moudou. Coming up, worrying numbers in the battle against sexually transmitted diseases. Stay with us.
Green Beat for a healthier planet.
Thousands of fairy lights line the more than 180 stalls at the famous Christmas market in Nuremberg, Germany. But organizers aren't necessarily worried about the electric bill because Christkindlesmarkt is fueled by sustainable resources. Peter Pluschka is head of the city's environmental department.
So etwas anpassen.
In our case, the energy used at the Christmas market is 100% renewable.
Nuremberg's Christmas market is one of Germany's oldest, dating back to the mid-16th century. None of the retail stalls are quite that old, but some do date to the late 1800s.
That is, of course, energy efficient since we are reusing the same material time and time again.
And to save on water and soap, visitors drink traditional mulled wine from different vendors in reusable mugs, which are collected and washed every day at a single location. 'Tis the season for sustainability. I'm Rebecca Ward for VOA's Green Beat.
An economic recovery may finally be taking hold in the United States. That's a sentiment confirmed in part by the central bank's decision to raise interest rates for the first time since the financial crisis. But as Mila Arcega reports, well, the outlook for the global economy is not as clear.
The big story as 2015 comes to a close was the Federal Reserve's decision to raise its benchmark lending rate by 0.25%.
And it reflects
the committee's confidence that the economy will continue to strengthen.
Despite ups and downs early in the year, U.S. growth appears to have stabilized, and unemployment is at a 7-year low. Ratings agency Standard & Poor's is looking at 2.7% growth in 2016, and something the U.S. has not seen in more than 7 years: full employment.
Good news, we are seeing improvement, and we do expect to see, as the economy gets stronger and stronger, we do expect to see that unemployment rate dip down a little bit lower, closer to 4.6% by year-end next year.
But the outlook for the global economy is a bit murkier, according to the National Association for Business Economics.
The outlook around the world is probably for less growth than the U.S. has been experiencing, at least among developed nations.
A UN report on global economic prospects sees continuing headwinds around the world, especially in emerging markets, which once attracted investors seeking higher rates of return. Here's Gus Fauché, economist at PNC Financial Services, on Skype.
I think that it is going to be more difficult for emerging markets. They're much more subject to big capital flows in and out. So there could be some dislocation there as the Fed starts to raise rates in the United States.
And as 2016 begins, persistent worries remain regarding slower growth in Europe and in China. Despite the uncertainties, most economists say warnings about a potential worldwide recession are exaggerated.
Obviously, things go wrong. We see certainly worries in the Eurozone, softness in China, all these things suggesting that that it will be a bumpy road ahead. But I don't necessarily say that suggests a recession is imminent.
Despite an improving U.S. outlook, the rising value of the dollar is likely to hurt exporters in 2016. Even as plunging oil prices reduce global energy investments. Millar Sega, VOA News, Washington.
A report by the United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says the number of cases involving all 3 common sexually transmitted diseases has increased for the first time since 2006. The 2014 Sexually Transmitted Disease Surveillance Report, released recently, shows that in the U.S., the number of reported cases of syphilis increased 15% over 2013. The number of gonorrhea cases rose 5% last year, and reported chlamydia cases increased by 3%. Sexually transmitted infections are spread primarily through person-to-person sexual contact. There are more than 30 different sexually transmissible bacteria, viruses, and parasites. The World Health Organization says each year worldwide, 500 million new cases of syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia, and trichomoniasis occur in adults. The WHO says overall STD prevalence rates continue to rise in most countries. Now joining us in the studio is William Smith, Executive Director of the National Coalition of STD Directors, NCSD. Mr. Smith, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. Listen, what do you make of this increase in the United States?
Sure. So I think sexually transmitted diseases are a global epidemic, but what the domestic data here in the U.S. tells me is that we're in big trouble. We have seen significant increases in all 3 of these diseases, as you mentioned, and these are the diseases that we track and record the number of infections. So these are really worrisome trends, and we have to have a very strong reaction.
Worrisome indeed. Do we have an idea as to why there is this increase?
I think it's a really good question. I think we know a number of things. The first is, with HIV becoming, in this country, much more of a chronic condition that is treatable, we're seeing people use condoms less and less, which is a huge concern to us because the best way to prevent STDs, and in particular syphilis, gonorrhea, and chlamydia, is to use a condom each and every time you have sex. So that's a big issue for us. And also, there's just the notion that if there are more STDs in a community and people are not getting tested as frequently as they should, there's more disease in a community and therefore more transmission happening.
But is there a sense that there seems to be a shift from these diseases in terms of awareness, given that HIV is taking so much focus?
I think that's a totally fair assessment. So I think what we know is that for many years, and for very good reason, our primary focus has been on HIV. And we can't lose our focus on HIV and AIDS. But at the same time, we're seeing significant increases in these other STDs. And what's most important is that these other STDs have their own complications, but they also increase our risks of acquiring HIV if exposed. So it's natural biology. If you have a disease that's causing an inflammation or a sore and another bacteria or virus touches that area, it increases the likelihood that you're going to acquire it. So there's lots of reasons for us to be concerned about these 3 STDs in particular, in addition to HIV. And we need to have a broader focus on the whole gamut of these sexual health issues.
What about in terms of age range, generations? Are the youth more at risk or the older generation? What can you tell us about that?
Sure. So here in the U.S., these diseases profoundly disproportionately impact young people. So young people in their sexual health sort of primes where they tend to be having more sex. In particular, gonorrhea and chlamydia in particular really adversely impact young people. And not treating these diseases, many of them are asymptomatic, has long-term consequences, including, for example, infertility. So it's really important that young people are taking care of their sexual health, getting tested frequently, because even though they may not have symptoms, these diseases are not inconsequential in terms of how they think about their lives and about the families they want to have.
So what about what NCSD is focusing on in terms of addressing these issues?
Sure. So it may come as a bit of a shock, but here in the U.S., the federal government only spends about $150 million every year on STD prevention. It's shocking and it's appalling. So one of the things that we believe strongly is we need more federal, state, and local resources to support the work that we need to do. Also in this country, our public health system, like our local public health departments or our state health departments, are really on the forefront of fighting STDs. Fighting STDs are not a moneymaker for health insurance companies. So this is a primary role for public health, and public health needs investments by government to support it. So that's one of the key things that we're working on. And then finally, just raising awareness. So thanks for having me on the show, which is enabling us to do that. Raising awareness and underscoring that condoms are your best protection, and if you are sexually active, get tested, and get tested frequently.
Thank you so much. It's so good to have you on the program, Mr. Smith. You're welcome anytime.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Great. And that was William Smith, Executive Director of the National Coalition of STD Directors. Doctors say there is now encouraging evidence that an annual blood test may cut ovarian cancer death by 1/5. In research conducted in the United Kingdom, scientists monitored over time levels of a chemical called CA125 in women's blood, which is produced by ovarian tissue. If levels became elevated, then the women were sent for further tests and ultimately surgery. But the researchers and independent experts say it is still too soon to call for mass screening because of concerns about the analysis. Ovarian cancer is difficult to pick up as symptoms, including abdominal pain and persistent bloating, are common in other conditions and is often caught too late. The researchers will follow the patients for what is expected to be another 3 years to confirm the results. The 14-year study on 200,000 women was published in The Lancet. It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Star Wars blasts box office records on opening weekend. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Djibouti, violent clashes between police and opposition protesters leave at least 9 people dead. In South Sudan, rebel representatives arrive in the capital, Juba, as part of a peace deal aimed at ending 2 years of civil war. In Burundi, parliamentary vote is postponed after weeks of protests as opposition parties say they're ready to resume talks to end the political crisis triggered by President Pierre Nkurunziza's bid for a 3rd term in office. Finally, in Nigeria, UN Children's Agency reports that Boko Haram violence has kept 1 million children out of school. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here is what's trending. We begin with what may be the least surprising story of 2015. Star Wars The Force Awakens raked in $238 million over the weekend, making it the biggest North American film debut of all time, according to studio estimates. Internationally, the film brought in $279 million, bringing its global gross to $517 million, second only to Jurassic World's a global $525 million. How about that? But the dinosaurs had the added benefit of China. Star Wars won't open there until January 9th. IMAX, 3D, and other premium large format screens further help drive the massive earnings. Nearly half of moviegoers, 47%, chose to see the film on the generally pricier screens. And next stop, from fantasy makeovers to cutting-edge anti-aging treatments, there was something for everyone in 2015. In the East, painting your body has always been part of a beauty regime, with women using henna dye to create intricate patterns. But now there's a modern twist. White henna has replaced the traditional red brick brown. Some traditionally male preserves are rapidly disappearing. Body tattooing has become popular among both men and women. When it comes to hair and makeup, well, beauty shows now encourage beauticians to show off their craftsmanship and push the edges of creative ideas. And finally, it's beginning to look a lot like a winter wonderland in the most unlikely of places. For the fourth year, Christmas has come to Dubai in the form of an outdoor winter festival. Fake snow piles high in the snow fight zone, delighting children who may not have seen any of the real flakes. The UAE is home to more than 100 different nationalities, and the festival brings together people from all over the world. Many families are heading there to spend the day listening to live music and enjoying winter favorites like mince pies, gingerbread cookies, and Dutch pancake. Last year, more than 30,000 people attending the festival, and organizers are expecting a bigger turnout this holiday, and that's what's trending today. Now, the Ethics Committee of football's governing body, FIFA, has banned embattled President Sepp Blatter and his one-time protégé from the sport for 8 years. The committee took the action Monday against Blatter and Michel Platini, the head of the Union of European Football Associations, over a $2 million payment Blatter made to Platini in 2011. Swiss prosecutors have opened a criminal investigation into the payment. Speaking to reporters in Zurich Monday, Blatter proclaimed his innocence.
I'm really sorry. I am sorry. I am sorry that I am still somewhere a punching ball, but I'm sorry that I am, as president of FIFA, this punching ball, and I'm sorry for football. I'm sorry for the Fédération Internationale de Football Association. I'm serving now more than 40 years. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for the 400 plus FIFA team members. They are working in FIFA. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry. But I'm also sorry about me, how I am treated in this world of humanitarian qualities.
The ban will likely derail Platini's bid to succeed Blatter when elections are held in February. Both men, who have denied any wrongdoing, are expected to appeal to the FIFA Appeals Committee and the Court of Arbitration for Sport. FIFA has been embroiled in scandal after 14 FIFA officials were arrested in Zurich in May and charged in the United States with nearly 50 counts of corruption, including racketeering, wire fraud, and money laundering. Joining me in the studio to discuss this matter is Africa 54's own sports guru, Sonny Young. Hello, Sonny.
Hello, Lenore.
So Sepp Blatter is sorry. This is a very, very strong message there. What is your reaction to the 8-year ban?
Well, I think we saw a defiant Sepp Blatter at that news conference at the old FIFA headquarters I really think because of this, both Blatter and Platini, for all practical purposes, have been sidelined, probably for good, from world football. From a historical perspective, FIFA has been around for more than 100 years. I would say this by far has been the worst year for FIFA in terms of negative publicity. It seems like every week we've been hearing about another corruption scandal, another FIFA official. But I think at this point, FIFA is looking forward to February of 2016. At the end of February, FIFA will elect a new president to succeed Sepp Blatter.
And speaking of that election, some people were saying earlier this year that Michel Platini could have been one of the favorites. Now that he's out of the race, at least according to the ruling, who are some of the contenders that are standing out?
Well, from an African perspective, Lenore, South Africa has put forth a gentleman by the name of Tokyo Sekwale. It's hard to describe him as a favorite in the election. Africa has a huge voting bloc of members, over 50. I think it's a total of 53 or 54 members of FIFA. And that is a huge bloc. Now, if he was to get all of those behind him for the election in February, I think it would be a big boost. But you're going to need more than that to win the election. You have to win, I think it's over 100 votes. I think it's actually closer to 110 to be officially named the FIFA president. So he'll have to lobby in regions outside of Africa, Europe, probably South America. And so it's a question mark whether he will become the first African leader of FIFA. Yeah. One possible contender, his name has been mentioned a lot, is Prince Ali bin Al Hussein. Yes. He's being mentioned as a possible favorite in the election.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on it. Quickly, before we go, Sepp Blatter has been at FIFA for more than 40 years. He's been credited to really bring soccer to a top level in Africa. What is his legacy at this point, especially as it pertains to Africa?
I think he has a very positive legacy in Africa. Under his leadership, the first World Cup was brought to South Africa in 2010. Largely due to Blatter, but also Nelson Mandela, the late, great Nelson Mandela. So he's credited with that. He's also credited with bringing a lot of grassroots development programs to Africa and pouring millions of dollars into football development in the continent. So I think overall his legacy is positive in Africa.
Okay, well, Platini and Blatter has said to appeal this, and we'll see what happened with the appeal. Thank you so much, Sonny Young, for joining us today.
Thank you, Lenore.
And that was Sonny Young, VOA's own reporter on sports, here analyzing the FIFA scandal. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC. And in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 300 and 600 UTC. Thanks for watching.